I know it's been a long time between videos on this particular build, so for anybody who doesn't know what I'm doing here, this is the technique that I use to start blackening the metal. I'm heating up the metal so that it's just hot enough to evaporate off the ferric chloride that I'm painting on there, and as it evaporates off the surface, it rapidly accelerates the tarnishing of the metal, which is the starting process I use in getting the aluminium blackened. Depending on the finish I want to get, I'll then go ahead and blacken the metal to a proper black, or I can just leave it prepped in this stage ready for painting, because the etching it does into the metal allows the paint to adhere to the surface much better. The bucket of water you can see me using here is mixed with baking soda, which just gives me an alkaline solution to neutralize the acid to make sure that that reaction doesn't keep on going in the metal. It's very important to neutralize the acid, because if you leave it on the metal, it'll continue eating away and pitting at the metal far more than you want it to do. Once it's been washed down like this, I just rinse it in plain water and it's ready for the next step in the process, whether that be further blackening or painting. So the original colour that they used in the film was a Humbrol 170 brown. It's pretty readily available as a model paint for doing up things like small models and tanks and all that sort of thing, but it's not really available in much larger quantities. You can get water-based colours mixed up pretty easily. The only problem with the water-based paints is they don't really like to stick to the metal very well, and quite often you've got to lay down undercoats and that sort of stuff, and it'll probably still end up chipping and peeling where you don't really want it to. You can see the two colours that are there. This is the original Humbrol paint, and this is the colour that I'm currently working with. That's actually still a little bit wet there at the moment, and you can see this, the other thing with it is that it's quite a glossy paint, but this is an off-the-shelf colour that you can find. It's a ColourBond colour that's specifically designed for coating on metals, and a lot of hardware shops and fencing supply places and that sort of stuff will carry that. This one's called an Ironbark, but I believe it's available under another couple of names of colours. If you're trying to track it down, just look for a ColourBond sort of matching brand. Quite often the shops that sell this sort of stuff will have a little colour sample swatch pads that you can sort of go through, which is pretty easy to sort of track it down. Whilst that's pretty close, you can see it's still a little bit lighter than it needs to be. That's partially because of the fact that this is a gloss paint rather than a flat. So the two things I'm going to do with it is firstly go over it with a wet and dry sandpaper to take that sheen off it. You can see there with the larger piece that colour is really quite close. Once the sanding is done and I do a bit more as far as the weathering is concerned, it's certainly going to be close enough for what we're going for. A lot of the time you'll see these portrayed in sort of like an army green or that sort of olive green colour. I won't necessarily say that that's the wrong colour, more that it was sort of a trick of the light as far as the filming was concerned, and from shot to shot it sort of does differ quite a bit depending on what that background colour is. But this is the colour that was listed as far as the original is concerned, so this is the colour that I'm going to be going for. Okay, so there it is all together. So what have we got right and what have we got wrong? Most of it's going quite well. There's no major issues. There's a few little things I've got to now refine. We've got a couple of rivet points that have to be put in here. The permanent mounting positions have to be made up for all of these bits. The cocking mechanism for this bit is a little bit short. You can see it's not going all the way back that it should do. So I have to modify the inside of that a little bit. What else are we missing? The trigger for the pump action section needs to be made and fitted in. along with the sort of loading flap section for where the shells would go in, just so that that area is sort of covered up a bit better. What else have we got? The small piece that goes on the pump action section where those screws are, that needs to be added in. I've already got it made up, it just needs to be incorporated into that mounting section. All the screws need to be flush set. I need to add a spring to the trigger so that that returns properly. The handle is a little bit light, it needs to be darkened down. That hasn't been oiled at the moment, that's just the raw timber, so I think once that's oiled it'll probably darken it down sufficiently. What I've got to do is work out the proper release mechanism here for the magazine. The magazine at the moment is just sitting there through friction, and whilst it is a pretty firm fit, I do want to have a proper release lever that matches the original as well. And then the final thing I've got to do is work out where I'm going to mount the little cover plate for the number counter, which needs to be appropriately finished as well, and then the internal electronics so that the numbers line up. But it's looking pretty close to being finished. The things I am quite happy with, the pump action section works really nicely. There's no issues as far as that one's concerned. I finally worked out the spring load mechanism for the rear stock, and that operates really nicely. It sort of locks into position where it's supposed to do. And it can be sort of long, medium or short, I guess. But it's certainly starting to look the part now. So the next video that comes along in this series will probably be the final reveal video with everything weathered and finished and all the electronics in place. So that'll be the update for this time, guys. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.